The mop handle snapped in my hands like a wishbone on Thanksgiving, spraying dirty water across my garage floor. I stared at the broken pieces, wondering if this was some kind of metaphor for my life. Wayne Grady, 42 years old, ex-Navy SEAL turned high school janitor, fixing broken things in a cluttered garage while his wife laughed upstairs on another work call. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Oh, Brad, you're so funny." Lila's voice drifted down through the ceiling like smoke from a house fire I couldn't see yet. Brad. Always Brad these days. Brad from accounting. Brad with the new BMW. Brad who needed so much after-hours consultation that my wife barely made it home for dinner anymore. I grabbed my toolbox and started fashioning a makeshift handle from an old broomstick. 20 years in the Navy taught me to improvise, adapt, and overcome. 15 years of marriage taught me to shut up and fix things quietly. The laughter stopped. Footsteps creaked across our bedroom floor, then silence. I knew that silence. It was the kind that meant secrets were being whispered into phones, the kind that made my gut twist like barbed wire. "Wayne?" Lila's voice called down, sweet as artificial honey. "I'm going to bed early. Big presentation tomorrow." "Sure thing," I called back, not bothering to look up from my repair work. "Another team-building exercise with Brad?" A pause. Too long. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, honey. Sleep tight." But I knew what it meant. After 2 decades of reading people's faces in combat zones, after learning to spot lies that could get your squad eliminated, I could smell deception like cordite in the air. My wife was cheating on me, and she thought I was too stupid to notice. The next morning at Jefferson High, I pushed my cart through empty hallways before dawn, invisible as always. Students saw right through me. Teachers nodded politely, but never really looked. I was the janitor, part of the background, like the lockers or the motivational posters nobody read. That's what made me dangerous, though nobody knew it yet. "Wayne!" Mrs. Travers, the school secretary, flagged me down as I mopped near the main office. She was 73, had worked here since the Carter administration, and knew everyone's business better than the FBE. "Got a minute?" I leaned on my mop. "What's the word, Mrs. T?" She glanced around conspiratorially, then whispered, "Saw your Lila at the Ivy restaurant last night. Fancy place. She looked real dressed up." My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral. "Yeah? She mentioned grabbing dinner after work." Mrs. Travers' eyes twinkled with gossip-fueled excitement. She wasn't alone, though. Handsome fellow in an expensive suit. They looked real. Close. "Thanks for letting me know." I resumed mopping, each stroke more aggressive than the last. "Wayne, honey, you okay? You look like you could chew nails." "Just tired, Mrs. T. Long night fixing broken things." That afternoon, I sat in my truck outside our house, staring at the front door like it might explode. My phone buzzed with a text from Lila. "Working late again. Don't wait up. Love you." Love you. 3 words that used to mean everything, now feeling like a slap across the face. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our shared cloud storage account. Lila had set it up years ago for convenience, sharing photos, documents, keeping our digital life organized. She'd forgotten that convenience worked both ways. The photos loaded slowly, each one a knife twist in my chest. Lila and Brad at expensive restaurants. Lila and Brad at some corporate retreat that looked more like a romantic getaway. Lila and Brad in what was clearly a hotel room, her wearing lingerie I'd never seen before. The timestamps told the story. 3 months of lies, 3 months of late meetings and team presentations and client dinners, 3 months of my wife building a secret life with another man while I cleaned up other people's messes and pretended not to notice. I scrolled through their text messages, my hands shaking with rage. Brad, can't wait to see you tonight. Wear that red dress. Lila, Wayne's working late at the school, we have all evening. Brad, when are you going to tell him? Lila, soon. I just need to figure out the finances first. He doesn't make much, but the house is in both our names. So that was it. Not just an affair, but an exit strategy. She was planning to leave me, probably take half of everything, and ride off into the sunset with her corporate Prince Charming. I closed the laptop and sat in the growing darkness, feeling something cold and calculating settle over me like armor. The old Wayne would have confronted her, would have shouted and demanded explanations, and probably ended up looking like the crazy jealous husband. But the old Wayne was gone. The new Wayne had learned patience in places where impatience got you eliminated. The new Wayne understood that the best revenge wasn't hot anger, it was ice-cold planning. My phone rang. Principal Kane's name flashed on the screen. Wayne, thank God you answered. His voice was shaking, desperate. "I need your help. They've taken my son." I sat up straight. "What? Who's taken him?" "I can't explain over the phone. Can you come to the school? Please, Wayne. I know about your background, your military training. The police, they can't help me. Not with this." 20 minutes later, I found Principal Kane pacing his office like a caged animal. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie askew, his face pale as chalk. "Tell me what happened," I said, closing the door behind me. "Tommy was walking home from soccer practice. 3 men grabbed him off Maple Street, threw him in a van. They called me an hour ago." He held up his phone with a trembling hand. "They want $50,000 by tomorrow night, or... Did you call the police? They said if I involve cops, they'll eliminate him." Kane collapsed into his chair. "Wayne, I know what you used to do. Mrs. Travers told me you were special forces or something. I need someone who can think like them, who can find my boy." I studied his face, reading the desperation, the fear, the hope he was trying not to show. "Why would someone kidnap your son? You got gambling debts? Enemies?" "Nothing like that. I'm just a high school principal, but..." He hesitated, then pulled out a manila folder. "There's been some irregularities in the school budget. Money missing from various accounts. I've been investigating quietly, trying to figure out who's been skimming funds." "How much money?" "About $200,000 over the past year. Someone's been very clever about it, moving small amounts from different budget lines. I think I was getting close to identifying them, and now they've got your son." I sat down across from him. "You have any suspects?" "A few. But Wayne, I can't think straight right now. I need someone with your skills, your training. Will you help me?" I looked at this broken man, this father whose world had just collapsed, and felt something stir in my chest. Not just sympathy, but recognition. We were both being screwed over by people who thought they were smarter than us, people who saw us as obstacles to be removed. "I'll help you," I said. "But we do this my way. No police, no heroics, no mistakes. And when we find these people, they're going to regret ever hearing your son's name." Principal Kane nodded eagerly. "Anything. Whatever it takes." "Good. Now tell me everything about everyone who has access to those budget accounts." As he talked, my mind was already working, planning, calculating. But part of me was also thinking about Lila and Brad, about betrayal and revenge, about how sometimes the people closest to you were the ones most likely to stab you in the back. This was going to be an interesting week. The next morning, I arrived at school 2 hours early, slipping through the building like a ghost. 20 years of marriage to a woman who barely noticed me had perfected my invisibility, but military training had taught me how to use it as a weapon. I started in the main office, using my master key to access filing cabinets, while Mrs. Travers was still at home drinking her morning coffee. The budget records painted a clear picture once you knew what to look for. Small amounts, carefully distributed across different departments, all authorized by digital signatures that looked legitimate but felt wrong. My phone buzzed. Text from Lila. "Stayed at Tanya's last night. Girl talk ran late. See you tonight." Tanya Morrison, Lila's best friend and biggest enabler. If Lila was having an affair, Tanya knew about it. Probably encouraged it. I'd never liked the woman. She had the kind of fake smile that made my skin crawl. I pocketed the phone and kept working. The beauty of being a janitor was that people talked around you like you weren't there. Over the years, I'd heard teachers complain about budget cuts, seen administrators argue about missing funds, watched the politics play out in whispered conversations by the copy machine. "Wayne?" A voice behind me made me spin around. Luis Ortega stood in the doorway, coffee in hand, wearing a security company uniform. My old SEAL team buddy looked exactly the same as he had 15 years ago. Compact, alert, with eyes that missed nothing. "Luis, what the hell are you doing here?" "Contract security work. The district hired my company to upgrade their systems." He stepped into the office and closed the door. "Question is, what are you doing going through financial records at 6 in the morning?" I gave him the short version about Principal Kane's son, the kidnapping, the missing money. Luis listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. "So you think whoever's been stealing from the school grabbed the kid to keep Kane quiet?" "Makes sense. Kane gets too close to the truth. Suddenly his son disappears, and he's got bigger problems than missing budget money." Luis nodded slowly. "You know, I've been reviewing their security footage for the past month. Noticed some interesting patterns, people staying late who shouldn't be, accessing areas outside their normal duties." "What kind of people?" "Well, for starters, that guidance counselor, Mr. Peterson. He's been in the main office after hours at least a dozen times in the past month. Always has some excuse about student files, but he's accessing the computer systems way more than necessary." I thought about Peterson. Mid-40s, always perfectly dressed, drove a car that seemed expensive for a guidance counselor's salary. Anyone else? The assistant principal, Mrs. Chen, and interestingly enough, someone from outside the school system. Guy in a suit, shows up every couple weeks, usually meets with Peterson or Chen in the conference room. You get a good look at this guy? Luis pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot from the security footage. It was Brad. My wife's lover was somehow connected to the missing money and possibly the kidnapping. You know him? Luis asked, seeing my expression. Yeah, I know him. I explained about Lila's affair, about the photos and texts I'd found. Luis whistled low. Man, that's rough. But it might be connected. If your wife's boyfriend is involved in stealing from the school, and Kane was getting close to exposing them. They grabbed his son to shut him up. I felt pieces clicking into place like a rifle being assembled, and Lila's been feeding him information about my schedule, about when I work late, when the building's empty. She know about your military background? She knows I was in the Navy, but I never told her details about what I did. She thinks I was just regular enlisted, nothing special. Luis grinned, but it wasn't a happy expression. So they have no idea they're messing with a SEAL. Not yet, but they're about to find out. The school day passed in a blur of routine maintenance and careful observation. I watched Peterson, noting how he avoided eye contact, how his hands shook slightly when he talked to other teachers. Mrs. Chen seemed nervous too, checking her phone constantly, jumping at unexpected sounds. At lunch, I called the number Principal Kane had given me for the kidnappers. A distorted voice answered on the second ring. You have the money? Working on it, I said, disguising my voice with a slight accent. Need more time. You have until tomorrow night, midnight. We'll call with instructions. I want to talk to the boy. Proof of life. A pause, then a younger voice came on the line. Dad, I'm okay. They haven't hurt me, but I'm scared. There's 3 of them, and they keep talking about... The line went silent. But I'd heard enough. Tommy Kane was alive, and more importantly, he was observant. 3 kidnappers, just like his father had said. And they were talking about something, probably their plans or their connections to the school. That evening, I sat in my truck outside the Ivy restaurant, watching through the windows as Lila and Brad enjoyed what looked like an intimate dinner. She was wearing the red dress from his text message, laughing at something he'd said, touching his hand across the table. They looked happy, comfortable, like a real couple instead of 2 people sneaking around behind a husband's back. My phone buzzed with another text from Lila. Working late again, don't wait up. I typed back, no problem, love you too. But I didn't love her anymore. Love required trust, and trust was something that, once broken, couldn't be fixed with duct tape and good intentions. What I felt now was something colder, more focused. The same feeling I'd had in Afghanistan when identifying enemy targets. I followed them from the restaurant to Brad's apartment complex, a fancy place with a doorman and valet parking. Watched them disappear into the building, probably heading up to continue their romantic evening while I sat alone in a dark parking lot like some pathetic private investigator. But I wasn't pathetic. I was patient, and patience was something my enemies had never learned to fear. The next morning brought a break in the case. Luis called me before dawn with news. I've been going through more security footage. Your boy Peterson made a call from his office yesterday afternoon, right after school ended. Guess who he called? Tell me. Brad Morrison, your wife's boyfriend. 20-minute conversation, and Peterson looked stressed the whole time. Morrison, the same last name as Tanya, Lila's best friend. Luis, do me a favor. Run a background check on Brad Morrison. I think there might be a family connection I missed. An hour later, Luis called back with information that made everything click into place. Brad Morrison is Tanya Morrison's younger brother. They grew up in Boston. Both moved here about 5 years ago. Brad works for Hartwell Financial Consulting, which has several school districts as clients, including this one. So Brad has access to school financial systems through his job. Peterson and Chen are helping him steal money from the inside, and Tanya's been helping Lila cover up the affair while feeding information to her brother about my schedule and the school's security. That's how I'd read it. But Wayne, there's more. I checked property records. Brad Morrison just bought a warehouse down by the river, paid cash, which is interesting for a guy who supposedly works in middle management. Where exactly? Luis gave me the address. I knew the area. Old industrial district, lots of abandoned buildings, perfect place to hide a kidnapped kid. I'm going to check it out tonight, I said. Not alone, you're not? I'll meet you there at 11. Luis, you don't have to. Brother, you saved my ass in Kandahar. Time to return the favor. Besides, I never liked kidnappers. That afternoon, I had an unexpected visitor. Principal Kane found me in the supply closet, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Any news?" he asked desperately. "Maybe, but I need you to do something for me. Tonight, I want you to call Peterson and Chen. Tell them you've decided to drop the budget investigation. Tell them you're too worried about Tommy to focus on missing money." "But why would I?" "Because I want them to think they've won. I want them relaxed and confident when I come for them." Kane studied my face, seeing something there that made him step back slightly. "Wayne, what exactly are you planning?" "I'm planning to get your son back, and then I'm planning to make sure the people who took him regret every decision that led to this moment. You're not going to eliminate anyone, are you?" I smiled, but it felt like ice cracking. "Principal Kane, I spent 20 years learning how to hurt people in ways that don't show up on x-rays. Trust me, when I'm done with them, they'll wish I'd just eliminated them instead." As the sun set over Jefferson High, I prepared for war. At 11 p.m., I met Luis in the parking lot of an abandoned gas station 6 blocks from the warehouse. He'd traded his security uniform for black tactical gear, and I could see the familiar focus in his eyes that meant he was ready for action. "I did some reconnaissance earlier," he said, spreading a hand-drawn map across the hood of his truck. "Warehouse has been modified recently. New locks, security cameras, soundproofing materials. Someone spent serious money making this place kidnapper-friendly." "How many entrances?" "Main door in front, loading dock in back, emergency exit on the north side. The emergency exit looks like our best bet. It's hidden from the street, and the lock's been replaced with something cheap." I studied the map, my mind automatically calculating angles of approach, sight lines, potential complications. "Security cameras?" 4 that I could see, but they're positioned to watch the perimeter, not the building itself. Whoever installed them doesn't really know what they're doing. Because they're accountants and guidance counselors, not professional criminals. I folded the map and tucked it into my jacket. "What about weapons?" Luis opened a duffel bag in his truck bed, revealing an assortment of non-lethal options. Tasers, pepper spray, zip ties, even a tranquilizer gun. "Where'd you get all this?" "Security consulting pays well, and I believe in being prepared." He handed me a taser and a small radio. "Channel 3 for communication. Try not to eliminate anyone unless absolutely necessary." No promises. We approached the warehouse from different directions, using shadows and abandoned cars for cover. The building loomed against the night sky like a concrete tombstone, its few windows dark except for a faint glow on the second floor. I reached the emergency exit first and examined the lock. Luis was right. It was cheap hardware store garbage, probably installed by someone who'd watched too many movies and not enough actual security training. I had it open in 30 seconds. The radio crackled softly. "Luis to Wayne. I'm in position at the loading dock. 2 vehicles parked back here, a van and a sedan. License plates match the description from the kidnapping. Copy that. I'm going in through the emergency exit. Give me 5 minutes, then create a distraction." "Roger. Be careful, brother." I slipped inside the warehouse, immediately hit by the smell of sawdust, motor oil, and something else. Fear. The kind of sharp, acrid scent that comes from someone being terrified for days. The interior had been divided into makeshift rooms using plywood and 2x4s. Cheap construction, but effective for keeping sound contained. I could hear voices from somewhere deeper in the building, muffled but urgent. Moving through the shadows, I made my way toward the voices. The warehouse's second floor had been converted into a crude apartment. Folding chairs, card table, portable heater, cases of beer and junk food. 3 men sat around the table, playing poker and drinking. I recognized one of them immediately. Peterson, the guidance counselor, looked nervous and kept checking his watch. The other 2 were strangers, hired muscle, probably, with the kind of eyes that said they'd done this before. "Kid's been quiet today," one of the strangers said, dealing another hand. "Good," Peterson replied. "Maybe he's finally getting the message." "When do we get paid?" the other stranger asked. "Tomorrow night, after Morrison confirms the investigation's been dropped. Then we let the kid go, collect our money, and disappear." Morrison. Brad Morrison, my wife's lover, orchestrating a kidnapping while sleeping with my wife and stealing from the school where I worked. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. I keyed my radio. "Luis, I've got 3 targets on the second floor. I'm going to look for the kid first." "Copy, standing by for distraction." I found Tommy Kane in what had once been the warehouse office, tied to a chair but unharmed. The boy was maybe 16, scared but trying to stay brave. He looked up when I entered, his eyes widening. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Friend of your dad's. We're getting you out of here." I cut his bonds with my knife. Can you walk? Yeah, I think so. My legs are asleep, but... He stood unsteadily. There's 3 of them upstairs. They've got guns. I know. We're going to go out the back way, nice and quiet. When we get outside, there's going to be a man in black clothes waiting for us. That's Luis. He's with me. Tommy nodded, trying to look braver than he felt. Are you a cop? Something like that. We made it halfway to the emergency exit before one of the hired muscle came downstairs to check on their prisoner. He saw the empty chair and immediately started shouting. The kid's gone! The kid's gone! Footsteps thundered overhead as the other 2 scrambled to respond. I pushed Tommy toward the exit. Run to the truck parked across the street. Tell Luis that Wayne says execute Plan B. What about you? I've got unfinished business. Tommy disappeared into the night just as Peterson and the other gunmen reached the bottom of the stairs. They saw me standing in the shadows and both reached for their weapons. I wouldn't, I said calmly. Peterson's hand froze halfway to his jacket. Who are you? How did you find us? I'm the janitor at your school. You know, the invisible guy who empties your trash and mops your floors, the one you never bothered to really look at? Recognition dawned in Peterson's eyes, followed quickly by fear. Wayne? Wayne Grady. That's right. The husband of the woman who's been feeding information to Brad Morrison, the guy you all thought was too stupid to figure out what was going on. The hired muscle wasn't as smart as Peterson. He went for his gun, probably figuring he could take one middle-aged janitor. He was wrong. I moved like I hadn't moved in 15 years, muscle memory taking over from conscious thought. The taser caught him center mass, dropping him like a sack of cement. He hit the floor convulsing, his weapon skittering away across the concrete. Peterson raised his hands. Wait, we can work this out. Can we? You kidnapped a 16-year-old boy. You've been stealing money from the school. You're working with the man who's sleeping with my wife. I stepped closer, and Peterson backed against the wall. Tell me, what exactly are we working out? I can give you Morrison. I can tell you where he is, what he's planning. I already know where he is. He's at his apartment, probably with my wife, celebrating how clever they all are. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. I've been recording this conversation. You just confessed to kidnapping and theft. Peterson's face went white. You can't... The police will what? Arrest you? Yeah, that's the plan. Outside, I could hear sirens approaching. Luis had called it in as soon as Tommy was safe, just like we'd planned. Here's what's going to happen, I told Peterson as police cars surrounded the warehouse. You're going to confess to everything, the kidnapping, the theft, Morrison's involvement, all of it. And in return, I won't tell my friends in the police department about how you've been selling drugs to students. I haven't been. Peterson, I clean your office every night. I know about the little baggies you keep in your locked desk drawer. I know about the cash you hide behind your diplomas. Did you really think the janitor wouldn't notice? The fight went out of him like air from a punctured tire. What do you want? Justice and revenge. Not necessarily in that order. The police burst through the doors, and I raised my hands to show I wasn't a threat. Detective Morrow, an ex-Marine I'd met at a few veteran events, took charge of the scene. Wayne, what the hell are you doing here? Returning stolen property, I said, nodding toward Tommy Kane, who was being checked by paramedics outside, and delivering some criminals who were stupid enough to mess with the wrong janitor. As they led Peterson away in handcuffs, he looked back at me with something like respect mixed with his fear. You're not just a janitor, are you? No, I said quietly. I'm not, and your friend Morrison is about to find that out the hard way. Oh, the third kidnapper, the one I'd tasered, was still unconscious when they loaded him into the ambulance. He'd wake up in a hospital bed with a police guard and a lot of explaining to do. Luis appeared at my elbow as the scene wound down. Phase 1 complete. The kid's safe, 2 of the bad guys are in custody, and Peterson singing like a canary. Good. Now comes the fun part. Morrison and your wife? Morrison and my wife. I looked at my watch. It was almost 2 a.m. They're probably asleep right now, thinking they've gotten away with everything. What's the plan? I smiled, and this time it felt genuine. Ever hear the phrase, revenge is a dish best served cold? Yeah. Well, I've been letting this one freeze for months. Time to serve it up. The next morning, I arrived at school early as usual, but everything was different. Word about the kidnapping and Peterson's arrest had spread through the building like wildfire. Teachers whispered in hallways, students clustered around their phones reading news articles, and Principal Kane walked through the corridors like a man who'd been given a second chance at life. Wayne! He found me restocking supplies in the janitor's closet. I don't know how to thank you. Tommy's home safe, the kidnappers are in custody, and the police recovered most of the stolen money. Just doing my job, I said, but I was thinking about the next phase of my plan. Your job? Wayne, you saved my son's life. You're a hero. I'm a janitor who got lucky. I closed the supply closet and looked at him seriously. Principal Kane, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to schedule a special assembly for tomorrow morning. Tell everyone it's about school safety and security, but I want you to invite some special guests. What kind of guests? I handed him a list I'd prepared. These people. Tell them it's important they attend, that the police want to talk to everyone who might have information about the missing money or Peterson's activities. Kane read the list, his eyebrows rising. Brad Morrison? But he doesn't work for the school. No, but he's been here plenty of times. Meeting with Peterson, accessing our computer systems through his consulting company. The police are very interested in talking to him. And Lila Grady. That's your wife. Yes, it is. Kane studied my face, seeing something there that made him nod slowly. I'll make the calls. That afternoon, I went home to find Lila packing a suitcase. She looked up when I entered the bedroom, her face flushed with what might have been guilt or excitement. Wayne, you're early. Slow day at work. Going somewhere? Just a weekend getaway with Tanya. Girl time, you know? She folded a negligee I'd never seen before into the suitcase. We're driving up to that spa in the mountains. Sounds nice. You've been working so hard lately, you deserve a break. She looked relieved that I wasn't asking more questions. Thanks for understanding. I know I've been distant lately, but work has been so stressful. I bet it has. I sat on the bed, watching her pack. Lila, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you love me? The question caught her off guard. She stopped packing, her hands frozen over the suitcase. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Do you love me? Of course I love you. We're married. That's not what I asked. She turned to face me, and for a moment I saw something real in her expression. Guilt, maybe, or regret. Wayne, where is this coming from? I've been thinking about us lately, about our marriage, our future, about whether we're both getting what we need from this relationship. Are you asking for a divorce? I'm asking if you love me, if you're happy, if this is the life you want. She sat down beside me, taking my hand in hers. Her touch felt cold, foreign. Wayne, I do love you, but you're right, I haven't been happy. I feel like we've grown apart, like we want different things. What do you want? I want more. More excitement, more passion, more of everything. You're a good man, Wayne, but you're safe, predictable. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating. I see. I squeezed her hand gently. Well, I want you to be happy, Lila, even if that means we need to make some changes. Relief flooded her face. Really? You'd be okay with that? I want what's best for both of us. I stood up and kissed her forehead. Have a good weekend with Tanya. After she left, I sat in our empty house and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a cold certainty that this chapter of my life was ending and a new one was about to begin. The next morning, Jefferson High's auditorium filled with an unusual crowd. Students, teachers, parents, and several adults who clearly didn't belong in a school setting. I recognized Brad Morrison immediately, tall, handsome, wearing an expensive suit and looking confused about why he'd been asked to attend. Lila sat near the back with Tanya, both of them whispering and checking their phones. They'd cut their spa weekend short when Principal Kane called, claiming the police needed to speak with anyone who might have information about the Peterson case. I positioned myself near the side exit, wearing my usual janitor's coveralls, invisible to everyone except Luis, who stood near the main doors in his security uniform. Principal Kane took the stage and began with the usual pleasantries about school safety and community cooperation. Then Detective Morrow stepped up to the microphone. Thank you all for coming. As you know, we've arrested several individuals in connection with the kidnapping of Tommy Kane and the theft of school funds. However, our investigation has revealed that this conspiracy was larger than we initially believed. Murmurs rippled through the audience. I saw Brad shift uncomfortably in his seat. We've discovered that the theft of school funds was facilitated by someone with access to the district's financial systems through an outside consulting firm. Someone who used their legitimate access to help steal over $200,000 from programs meant to benefit students. Now Brad was looking around nervously, probably wondering if he could slip out without being noticed. We've also learned that this conspiracy required inside information about school security, staff schedules, and administrative procedures, information that could only have come from someone with intimate knowledge of how the school operates. Lila's face had gone pale. Tanya was frantically texting someone, probably trying to warn her brother. "Brad Morrison," Detective Morrow said, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. "Would you please stand up?" Every head in the room turned to look at Brad, who remained frozen in his seat like a deer in headlights. "Mr. Morrison, we have evidence linking you to the theft of school funds through your position at Hartwell Financial Consulting. We also have evidence that you conspired with school employee Richard Peterson to embezzle money over a period of several months." Brad finally stood up, his face flushed red. "This is ridiculous. I demand to speak to my lawyer." "You'll have that opportunity, but first, I'd like to ask you about your relationship with Lila Grady." The auditorium went silent. I could see Lila shrinking in her seat, trying to make herself invisible. "Mrs. Grady," Detective Morrow continued, "would you please stand as well?" Lila rose slowly, her face white as paper. "Mrs. Grady, our investigation has revealed that you provided Mr. Morrison with detailed information about your husband's work schedule, about when the school building would be empty, and about security procedures. This information was crucial to the success of the theft operation." I don't know what you're talking about," Lila stammered. "We have text messages, Mrs. Grady. Hundreds of them, recovered from Mr. Morrison's phone. Messages where you discuss your husband's schedule, where you provide details about school security, where you coordinate meetings between Mr. Morrison and the conspirators." I stepped forward then, moving from the shadows into the light. The auditorium was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "Detective Morrow," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the silence. "I believe I can help clarify things." Every eye in the room turned to me. Lila's face crumpled when she saw me, understanding finally dawning. "Wayne Grady," I announced to the room, "husband of Lila Grady, janitor at this school, and the person who discovered the conspiracy and rescued Tommy Kane." Gasps and whispers filled the auditorium. Students who had walked past me in the halls for years suddenly saw me as something other than invisible. "You see, my wife thought she was very clever. She thought she was having a secret affair with Mr. Morrison while helping him steal money from the school where I work. She thought I was too stupid, too unobservant, too safe to figure out what was going on." I walked slowly toward where Lila and Brad stood, the crowd parting before me like the Red Sea. What she didn't know is that I spent 20 years in the Navy SEALs. What she didn't know is that I've been watching, listening, and gathering evidence for months. What she didn't know is that her safe, predictable husband was planning the most comprehensive revenge in the history of this town. Brad tried to push past me toward the exit, but Luis was waiting for him. 2 police officers flanked Luis, and Brad found himself surrounded. "Wayne," Lila said, tears streaming down her face. "Please, let me explain." "Explain what? How you betrayed our marriage. How you helped steal money from children's programs. How you provided information that led to a 16-year-old boy being kidnapped?" I shook my head. "There's nothing to explain, Lila. You made your choices." I turned to address the entire auditorium, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what I've learned about revenge. It's not about anger, it's about patience. It's not about violence, it's about justice. And it's not about getting even, it's about making sure that people who hurt innocent others face consequences they'll never forget." Detective Morrow stepped forward with handcuffs. "Brad Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit theft, money laundering, and accessory to kidnapping." As they cuffed Brad, he looked at me with something like respect. "You played this perfectly. I never saw it coming." That was the point. They arrested Tanya next, for her role in helping coordinate the conspiracy and providing cover for the affair. Then they turned to Lila. "Lila Grady, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit theft and providing material assistance to a criminal enterprise." As they led my wife away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. "Wayne, I'm sorry. I never meant for anyone to get hurt." "I know," I said quietly. "But sorry doesn't fix broken trust, and it doesn't bring back stolen money, and it sure as hell doesn't undo the trauma that Tommy Kane went through because of your choices." The auditorium erupted in applause as the arrests concluded. Students cheered, teachers clapped, and parents nodded their approval. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. Principal Kane approached me as the crowd dispersed. "Wayne, I don't know what to say. You've saved the school, saved my son, and brought criminals to justice. How can we ever repay you?" "You can't," I said simply. "But you can remember that sometimes the people you don't notice are the ones watching everything." Later that afternoon, I sat in my empty house, surrounded by the remnants of a marriage that had died long before I'd admitted it to myself. My phone rang constantly, reporters wanting interviews, neighbors offering support, old military buddies who'd heard the news. But I didn't answer. I just sat in the silence, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Luis found me there an hour later, letting himself in through the back door. "How you holding up, brother?" "Better than I expected. It's over, Luis. Really over." "Any regrets?" I thought about that question for a long moment. No. Lila made her choices, Brad made his, and I made mine. The difference is, I made mine with full knowledge of the consequences. What happens now? Now I figure out what Wayne Grady does with the rest of his life. For the first time in 20 years, I get to decide that for myself. Luis nodded and sat down beside me. "You know, the school district's going to need a new head of security, someone with experience, someone they can trust. You offering me a job? I'm offering you a future." I looked around the house that had been my prison for so long, then smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. "You know what, Luis? I think I'll take it.